Well, good afternoon. When we enlighten ourselves with the gift of life that the Creator had provided us, I guess, in the sense of water, where it's essential for all living beings, regardless of who we are. Sometimes I think we've taken it for granted, of a situation that we should have held dear to our heart. You talk about the election on Monday. I got to admit, I vote conservative ever since I was 18 years old. I tried to vote them out. One of the things that I'm going to enlighten you about, how the effects of not monitoring and not looking after water and what happens to it when it's gone through the system of energy. You heard about how water is essential, where the world corporations are trying to incorporate water and own it, as they say. Well, one of the things that we know for a fact under the treaty rate, and many of you, I don't know if you understand what the treaty meant in regards to how we were supposed to coexist with each other. More ways than one, our treaty meant that both sides would be equal partners in sharing into an agreement. Somewhere down the line, probably the day after the treaty was signed, that they said that they weren't going to honor their part of it. So and because of the lack of education that the First Nations people had back then, didn't understand the concept of writing down and putting it down on paper. But the one thing I know for a fact, that when we looked after the water, it supplied us with life in abundance. It supplied our people with wealth in our surrounding area. We went out and did our fishing, did our trapping, did our gathering, did everything that we surround ourselves with water. We live on the lake shore of Lake Athabasca, probably one of the biggest lakes here in Alberta. Unfortunately, I have to be downstream from all of the energy that is coming out of Alberta. When you look at all the major river systems in Alberta alone, the only river that's not regulated for protection is the Athabasca River. And the reason why they don't regulate the Athabasca River is because the oil sands need that water. They need it to produce their oil. You talked about earlier this morning in regards to pipelines. I'll fill you in on what's going on in the whole system where it'll connect to the pipeline. In regards to the community health in Fort Chip, not only in that area but also downstream, Fort Mackay would probably be the most impact First Nation in the region. Losing their land, losing their water, and everything else in the community, pretty much keep intact with their identity. But when we get a community, go back about 15 years, we've lost somewhere around over 100 of our community members. 85% of our community members that we've lost to cancer. Not knowing, what was the problem when it first started, but we had a sense of what was going on. We used to drink water from the Lake Athabasca by the cup. We used to drink it from the river by a cup. And now we have to take our water from town into the bush to drink it. Because no one in the community will drink water from Lake Athabasca, nor will they drink it from the river anymore. That was taken away from us. And yet the Alberta government, with the feds say that there's nothing wrong with the water system. You know, and when you got the Athabasca River flowing into Lake Athabasca, which flows out and goes down the Peace, well, it flows right through our community. And we have our intake water system that supplies the community right where the water flows through our community. So it's taken in whatever's coming in, raw material, even though, you know, after years of it coming down the river, it starts to accumulate. And that's what we see. That's what we're seeing right now in this whole process of oil development. All the effects start to accumulate. After 40 years in the region, the devastation, not only within the water, but within the air quantity and with water quality, the disturbance of land and everything. They have what they call tailings ponds in our area, massive tailings ponds. And in these tailings ponds are highly toxic. Nothing grows in these tailings ponds, nothing at all. They've tried every which way to get something to grow on there. So this way they could, you know, promote to the world, say, look, it's growable, there's something, we'll live in it. But they can't do it till today. And in the system, it seeps into the Athabasca River. You know, it's been seeping in ever since day one when the tailings ponds were built. The early people that worked on the first tailings ponds, when they built the first dike and they started to fill it up with water, it said it took them 3 months of pumping water steady just to get 1 inch of water in the surface. You know, so what does that tell you? That the water was going somewhere automatically right from day one. And over the years, you know, it just kept going on, where once they got the tailings ponds going, all these toxic chemicals started going into the system, and then it just kept seeping. Well, they have a process in the oil sands that's highly toxic. Probably one of the top areas in regards to where you hear of Area 51 in the United States, that it's a highly top secret military base operation that's going on right now. Within the tar sands alone, there is this one area that they call the Area 51 of oil sands development. In that area, it's highly toxic. It's very, you know, ignitable. It's explosive is enormous. It's so sensitive that you have 2 different workers. They have this department where these workers work at, and you have the general maintenance guys that walk around, and they have this yellow line on the floor in this area that you're only, if you work in that area, you do not walk past it. If you are working off the area and you walk into the area, it's so tight security that they will fire you as soon as you go. You're terminated automatically. You have no say whatsoever. You know, because there's so much secrecy going on in that area. And the reason why they're doing it is because of all the solvents that they put into the bitumen when they transport it down the pipelines. And the reason why they do that is because it makes the bitumen flow a lot easier in the pipelines. They could use water. Water could be used. But because of the corrosive and everything, it wears out the pipes a lot quicker. But they use the solvents, and it makes it slip through that system a lot quicker. You know, and they don't tell the Southerners in regards to what's in those pipelines. There's not only one pipeline going, there's 2. There's one coming back. Because they recover all those solvents. And they pipe it back up 100%. And then those solvents, 1 barrel of it leaks into the tailings pond that they cannot capture. And that's what is so toxic in those tailings ponds that can't grow anything. And that's what leaks into the system. In the department that I'm referring to, they have this MSD sheet that's supposed to specify all of the health issues in regards to what they're dealing with. Every one of them. Does it cause cancer? Unknown. Leukemia? Unknown. Asthma? Unknown. The reason why they don't want anybody to know what it's all about is because they don't want to know, get this out into the public about how toxic that department is. And it's highly toxic. Toxic enough that over years, people will start to get sick. You know, and it's into our water system. It's in the pipelines. You know, when you talk about, regardless if it's the Enbridge or the Keystone, if they burst through a major water system, you know, the water system's in trouble. You know, and I sit amongst government leaders, both federal and provincial. I continue to raise these issues with them. And, you know, it falls upon deaf ears. We try to tell them to do things in a more reasonable way, you know, and then come back and they do it in a more radical fashion. And, you know, that's what they give the name of the title for activists. I guess we're all activists. I guess we're radicals in the eyes of Oliver, I guess, Minister Oliver. You know, and when I asked that question, I said, what is a radical behavior? Is it being radical to stand up and believe that everything for a healthy lifestyle living for everyone is equal? To protect Mother Nature in its very form of existence? To drink a cup of water from the lake where we know for a fact that we could go down there every day and drink that water? Is that radical behavior? Or is radical behavior ripping up the land, polluting the water, polluting the air, displacing people just because of natural resources? So if they call me a radical for standing up for the people, well then, I guess I am a radical. I'm a radical for the betterment of all people. Our treaty speaks on behalf of the First Nations to protect the nation. But under our treaty, we speak up for Canadians as well, because your government isn't doing that for you. So we have rights, and in those rights, we have to learn how to exercise them. And exercise them we will. You know, one of the things I look at in regards to how industry and government used to have us at these stakeholder relations tables. It says, oh, you're First Nations, you're our major stakeholders in this region. And you have to be right at the table sitting with us. And I sat there and I said, we are not stakeholders in this region. We are rights-based holders. Supersede the stakeholders department. Until they deal with us. Until you deal with us in a way where we are recognized. We are not here to disrupt the whole economy system. We're here to fix it. In the treaty it says, within trust, well, we've trusted you for 100 years. And look what have transpired in the last 100 years. Now it's time for us to start implementing the treaty as it was intended to be. And we will fight in regards to implementation of the treaty through the court system if need be, but through diplomatic gestures of going out in the public, going out around the world and start bringing the issues and saying, this is what Canada's doing to us. When Canada went to China and talked about human rights and everything and says, you know, China needs to change the way they treat human people in regards to their country, well, Canada should have looked back at us first and says, yeah, we got to change our way about how we treat the First Nations people in our own country before going overseas and telling China to do the same. And when it comes to water, you know, we fight for the water issue. Because we know that the very existence of life is the body of water. 95% of our body is water. We're born into this system, into this world through water. We've always survived off water. And we can't allow the big corporations to come in and start claiming this water for their own. And if we continue to do so and allow them to dispossess or dispose or whatever, disfranchise, I guess how you say, the quality and quantity of water bodies all over northern Alberta or the north of Canada. And that's what they're after. So they're trying to take our people off the land. The provincial government put this new law out called PLAR. I don't know if many of you are aware of it. It's Public Lands Administration Act out there. So we challenged that. And we said that this law will not apply to us because it applied to everybody, and it said that the treaty First Nations people will not be able to go out on their traditional territories, and you'll have to move camp within every 14 days. You will not be able to grow a garden within your traditional territories because it's not regulated. We have to inform the government of doing so. What I've done in return in that regards is that I started buying all these cabin packages for our First Nations people, and we start putting them out on the land. Because then it gives us our right to be out there. So therefore we have an argument based on those facts. And we will continue to do so. We know our traditional territories extend beyond the boundaries of our reserve. Our reserve was to keep us secluded into one part of our traditional territories, while our forefathers traveled hundreds of miles in our area. When the treaty was signed in our area, Chief Alexander Levitt at the time said that from where I stand, our traditional territories extend a boundary of 300 miles in every direction where we go. So you could tell how big our traditional territories were just by the chief back then stated how big our traditional territories are. But then they were secluded to a reserve. With all due respect, at some point in time, maybe it'd be best that we give up these reserves and say enough of the treaty, because the treaty does not do anything for us. But we will keep the treaty for the bureaucrats and the big systems out there, just so that we would be able to keep a dialogue. But we will also keep the reserves, because when they behave badly, we will put them in there. And I think at this point in time, I think the bureaucrat system has to change.
Yes.
You hear of all these politicians, and there's a lot of good politicians out there, don't get me wrong. It's because of the bureaucrat system, about how it's set up. It's a lot easier to say no than to say yes, because if you say yes, the whole system has to change. Everybody has to start working. And nobody doesn't want to work anymore in the bureaucrat system. Say no. They'd rather say yes to changing the policy to lower the standards. But they will not say no to better a community in regards to moving forward. They'd rather say yes to corporate industry and saying, yeah, we will lower everything. So your life has a dependency, and you talk about how long people live after they work in the tar sands whatsoever. You hear stories of a guy that turned 55, and because he worked in the oil sands for 30-something years, retired and everything, and they gave him this big retirement party, went back to his community within a month, he was dead. So it just goes to show that the people that work in those areas were highly toxic in some areas, don't have a long lifespan. That's just the way life is in our area. But we will keep the government to the hot fire, as we say, and keep them on their toes, and we will not back down. As a leader, I think that, you know, I have every right to speak on behalf of my people. And one thing for sure, that the government from both levels, along with industry, trying to silence me. You know, and I will not be silenced for the betterment of the greed of big corporations. And I think that we all have to truly understand what it's like to endure all the hardship that we have to go through as leaders. You know, and I'm not saying that, you know, it's all for opportunities. You know, being a chief is a lot different than being the Premier of Alberta. My job is more complex, far more complex than it is to being the Prime Minister or whoever up there. You know, we have to deal with social problems. We have to be a counselor. We have to make decisions. You know, people are always asking on a day-to-day basis, and I take the brunt of it all. But I still stand strong for my people because I'm a firm believer that, you know, what we're doing something right. And on the final note, the way I look at it right now is that, and I've said this before, as long as energy and corporations continue to poison our river system of the Athabasca River, and if we don't stand up and fight now, we will become environmental refugees within our own land. We will have to move from our community because Lake Athabasca will probably turn into one of the world's largest tailings pond system, and it's naturally, it's natural. It was there already, but because of what man keeps pumping into the river system, it's just going to keep go into Lake Athabasca, and eventually it'll nothing will be able to you know, survive there. You heard about Lake Ontario a few years back where it was totally toxic whatsoever. It's the same system. What's going to happen, and it's going to continue on going all the way down to the, you know, north end. And I'm starting to get the people aware of it from up north, and everybody is starting to get on board. And, you know, that's a tough job to do. So with that, you know, I'd like to thank you for listening to you know, our side of the story that many of you might not hear out there or aren't fully aware of it. But it's happening, and it's happening to our people. It's happening to Canadians all alike, and at least we have a chance to say enough is enough because we are exercising our right, and we just need support. And we need people to go out to their constituent areas and tell your representatives that sit at the legislative building or at the federal level as well, to say this is what's wrong and you guys need to change it. That's your guys, that's what you guys have. You could do that. And I could argue from the other front. And the First Nations are finally realizing this. And they're saying, yes, enough is enough. So like that, I'd like to thank you all, and you know, enjoy.
Thanks, Chief Adam. That was really, really powerful. We're going to shift now from the north of the province to the south, and one of my great joys in my position with the council is to work with a network of grassroots chapters. And back on one evening in September of last year, I was walking through Mill Creek Ravine, and I got a call on my cell phone from an activist with our Lethbridge chapter saying, I'm out just outside Lethbridge on the Blood Reserve, and there are, and I know that there's legal proceedings happening, so I'll put, there are allegedly three women blockading a whole string of fracking trucks that are coming onto the Blood Reserve to frack. You know, and I was like, oh my God, what's going on? And it came out that there's this really powerful alleged action going on to stop this really harmful really harmful process from going on just outside Lethbridge. One of the people who was involved in that was allegedly Jill Cropbeard-Wolf, and I'd like to invite her up.
Hello, my name is Jill Cropbeard-Wolf. I come from the Blood Reserve, also known as Ghana. As you're aware, there is still some legal issues regarding the incident that occurred September 9th. It was, you can't use certain terms, as I've been cleared of my charges. However, the two other ladies, one of them is going to trial in June. So anything that has been put on media, YouTube, any letters, anything that was written have been taken down just because it can be used to affect the other two individuals, whether or not they're going to be found guilty of the charges. So I guess give you a little background history. The Blood Reserve is the largest Indian reservation in all of Canada. And the family that I come from is the hereditary chieftainship, which is quite funny because back in the early 1900s, my great-great-grandfather was one of the individuals fighting mineral rights. And when all of this oil and gas deal came about, and I was one of the individuals who I was I'm not gonna lie, a little ignorant to what was going on. And it was through one of my friends, my next door neighbor, who had kind of told me, you know what's going on, Jill? Like our chief and council just signed a $50 million lease to Murphy Oil and Bullwood, which will give them access to at least a minimum of half the reserve. Whereas our community has oil and gas exploration, however, that was towards the north end of our reserve. And so now what was gonna happen was the north end is not very highly populated. It's got maybe about 200, 300 people who live within that area. However, now it allowed Murphy Oil and Bullwood to come in and to come to at least half of the reserve, to come to homesteads within 2-3 kilometers of homes, gave them access to exploring by the community schools. So I started to get myself educated on what was happening, what exactly did it mean, and being First Nations and growing up with my mother and my father introducing us to activism back in the 80s. They were fighting for the right for education and for pursuing post-secondary. And so, I have that blood in me. My grandfather is my great-grandfather was head chief Cropbeard-Wolf, who in the 1900s, when they were trying to make our reserve smaller, he fought against it, and he was a firecracker, and he was not going to let things happen. So, I was like, that's the blood that runs through me, and I need to do something. So, I am part of my whole needing to stand up was, we always talk about the youth and the little ones and all the decisions that we make right now. Our young people are going to have to live with the consequences of our actions. And I have two awesome little ones in my family. My little nephew Presley, who's sitting right back there. He's my travel companion. He comes with me to different meetings and workshops and that. And he's got up and he's spoken and he said, just because I'm a little guy, I'm 8 years old, doesn't mean that I don't have a voice, that I'm not concerned. So I decided that I was going to be the voice to the people who didn't have a chance to say anything. So back in the fall of 2010, the Blood Reserve Chief and Council signed a $50 million lease with Murphy Oil and Bullwood, which, like I said, gave them access to a minimum of half the reserve. I believe they have minimum to do 16 drill sites. That's just the minimum. With some inside information that we had received, we were informed that actually the Blood Reserve is slated to have over 200 of fracking sites, which is almost double what all of Alberta has right now. So the Blood Reserve is supposed to have 230 plus sites on our reserve. So just a lot of, was an ongoing issue. Chief and Council, when the agreement was signed, we had two individuals who right from the beginning on our council who were not in agreement of this. They wanted more information. And sadly, this past December, we lost one of our strong advocates, the late Dolores Day Chief, who, if it wasn't for this lady, we would not have gotten a lot of the information that was supposed to be privileged to community members. However, the information that was shared in Chief and Council chambers that was accessible to Blood Tribe members was not shared. And only through her wanting to share with us, we were able to access reports and we were able to access all kinds of information regarding the deals that had been signed and what exactly things meant. But we lost her in December, so that was a blow to the community and to all of us who were fighting against what was happening on the Blood Reserve. And the Blood Reserve has had oil and gas exploration, like I said, on the north end. However, we were not aware that the fracking had been taking place. And once we started to get an understanding of, what exactly is this? What does it mean? How much water are we going to use? Where is the water coming from? What is going to happen to the water? Where is it going to be disposed of? When we started asking those questions, I guess out of arrogance, we had some individuals who said, why are you only worried about it now? We've been fracking the Blood Reserve for the last 10 years. Why are you guys now jumping on board? However, that information had never been shared until people started questioning what was going on, because on the north end of our reserve, one of our community members, who's also a principal at one of our schools, was getting quite concerned because he was losing cattle. Cattle were dying, and he was not sure what was going on. And then out in the area that he is, the coyotes were staying away from these deceased cows and calves, and that. He was wondering what was going on. Why were the coyotes not even wanting to have anything to do with them? So he had, through networking and that, he had the air quality tested in his area with and his water tested, which now he when he goes to any kind of meetings, he carries a jar of water with him that has at least mercury is one of the things identified inside the water. And that's the water that they have to drink, that's the water they have to shower in, that's the water that he gives to the cattle. So it became quite a political thing in our community. It really pinned people against one another. You were either for oil and gas or you were against oil and gas. And with the First Nation community that I belong to, there's about 80% unemployment. And when the oil and gas deal had been signed, the first thing that they had mentioned was that there was going to be a distribution given to the people. $850 was given to every person who was a registered member as of, I believe, November 5th, 2010. You were eligible for the $850 distribution. They made it appear as though the distribution that was given out to our people went hand in hand with the $50 million that was signed with Murphy Oil and Bowood. However, the monies that were used was about $33 million that had been held in trust in Ottawa, and that's what they had tapped into. However, they didn't want to share that kind of information with the people. So we had a lot of people who, we have a lot of social issues. So, $850 free money that's not going to be, is considered a gift, it's not going to be taxed or anything. It got a lot of people wanting to go for this oil and gas without understanding exactly what that meant to our community. One of our strongest supporters, who sadly is no longer practicing in our community, is one of our own women, Dr. Esther Telfeathers, who she became quite concerned because she was seeing on a daily basis people coming into the office who were complaining of respiratory issues, who were having very rare cancers. That I believe in a 6-month span, she lost 3 men who had cancers that were supposed to be, I believe, 1 in 1,000 people were supposed to be affected with this cancer, and we lost 3 people to a community of 10,000 plus. So she was quite concerned that the cancer that was rare was hitting our community in higher numbers. And she had, back in February of last year, she had met with Murphy Oil and Bowood and had requested a listing of what exactly chemicals will you be using at these frac sites. And as of today's date, she has still not received that list of chemicals that they will be using at our frac sites. So it had been a long journey, and we had done a lot of letter writing and trying to get answers from Indian Oil and Gas. And every time we try and ask questions, we're always referred back to, you need to talk to your chief and counsel. However, our chief and counsel has yet to return any of my phone calls, any of my emails, any of my letters that I have written since 2012. I have not received anything from any of them. So we were wondering, well, what are we supposed to do if our own chief and counsel are not wanting to answer these questions that we have? And it had been, like I said, it had been a long process of trying to get answers, trying to find out what's going on. And a lot of the propaganda that was shared with our community was funded by Murphy Oil and Bowood, and they'd throw in millions of dollars to put each individual mailbox in the community. Booklet, I have a copy of one of the booklets that they gave to each of the community members. They put those inside mailboxes. They had people going door to door and letting them know that don't believe any of the hype of Gasland and burning water, that those are not going to happen to the Blood Indian Reserve. Nothing like that's going to happen here. We're following all kinds of environmental, the proper procedures, and the assessments were done prior to any of these leases being agreed to, and you have nothing to worry about. However, we laughed at that, and we said, what makes the Blood Indian Reserve so special that we are not going to have problems with the air, we're not going to have problems with water, we're not going to have health issues? What makes us so special that we're not going to have any of these when other First Nations communities and non-Native communities are having these issues? What makes us so special? And nobody could answer that. All they could tell us is don't believe the gas line, don't believe any of those, anything that you see in the media, because those are they're scare tactics. They're trying to make you afraid of oil and gas. So as I'm leading up to the September 9th arrest. So back in early of last year, we had an environmental conference, and Josh Fox from Gasland came to our conference, and he went out to the Blood Reserve and he filmed the community. And I'm not too sure if it has been rumored that the Blood Indian Reserve is going to be featured in Gasland 2, the follow-up to Gasland movie. So we had tried to have screenings on our reserve of Gasland. We had to have screenings of Burning Water, of Rosebud. However, anytime we had tried to have any kind of community information sessions, just to get the information out there, what exactly the oil and gas meant to our community, we had very little people turn up. We actually had been told if you have the movie Gasland accessible to community members, that people were going to lose jobs, people were being intimidated. So a lot of people were very supportive. However, a lot of people didn't want to stand up and didn't want to say that I don't agree with this, because they had a family. They had to worry about whether or not they were going to be able to feed their children, and if they were going to be able to take care of their loved ones. So that's where we came in. We came in as the ones who stood up and gave a voice to the individuals who couldn't stand up and say that I don't agree with this, I don't think that this is right, and I want some answers. So September 9th that was never the intention, was to get arrested or anything. I'm a law-abiding citizen. I know I'm tattooed up, and a lot of times people think I'm of the criminal element, and I'm like, you know what? I'm the most law-abiding, most conservative individual you'll meet. I say please, I say thank you. I'm not some mean, crazy, rebel or anything like that. And so September 9th, the site that I had been arrested at was the reason that I went to the site was it was very close to my mom and dad's residence. It's about less than 5 kilometers from where my mom and dad live. And from my mom and dad's place, you could hear on a 24/7 basis, you could hear the trucks, you could hear the noise coming from that site. And Murphy Oil had permission to use one road off highway number 2 to access this site. However, they started using the road that went directly through my mom and dad's property. And there's a small little community, about maybe 30 families that live in that area, and all the people there majority of them have health issues, and a lot of them have asthma issues. So I was quite concerned that the road was being utilized by Murphy Oil. So I had I had tried to make a complaint to Murphy Oil. And when it came down to phoning Murphy Oil to make this complaint, I was given a directory of, well, and I had no idea who I was supposed to speak to, because on the signs that you were supposed to make complaints to, it doesn't tell you to call extension 221 or extension 226 or anything like that. It just is to call the 1-800 number. So that I wasn't able to, I left a complaint on somebody's voicemail. I don't know whose, if they ever received the complaint, but the day of the, like I said, I have to be very careful because the two other individuals are still dealing with the legal issue of the intimidation charges that we got on September 9th. But the day of September 9th, I work at a high school, and my family is still very active in our traditional spiritual ways, and we had our Motoki Society, which is our Buffalo women, had come out to my mom and dad's home to have one of their ceremonies there. And so while the ceremony was going on, I'm getting these text messages and that there's something going on at the site near your mom and dad's house. If you can, we need support. And so I had gone out with decided to go out there to feed the people who were there. We had a lot of extra food, so that had been my intention, was I went to go feed everybody who was there. And I went out, and I had my two little ones, Presley and Jezebel, who came along with me to the site, and we we were there, and just, it was quite funny, because the biggest thing that, one of the biggest selling points of this oil and gas deal was the revenue it was going to create for our community, as well as the employment. And I must share that the only individual on that night of September 9th who was a community member was the man who was hired as security. Because after the convoy of vehicles left, you didn't see one of our community members leaving in a 30-plus convoy. And they said this was supposed to be employment for our people. And like I said, the only person that was employed was security to keep our own people away from these sites. So we had gone to the site, and it had been it was just more of a community thing and getting together. And it has been really hard because there's been a whole lot of people who are wanting to vote, who want to be out there and publicly supporting us, because there is fear of intimidation. You're going to lose your job. You're not going to have employment. You're not going to be at work. Just it's become a very, very volatile type of situation where people are not allowed to say and not allowed to do anything, and if you do, the response is aggressive action against you. So we had went to the site, and after being there for a while, Chief of Council had been notified that we were on site. Chief of Council refused to take any phone calls from us as to what was to the site, and they dispatched Blood Tribe Police as well as the RCMP to the site. And I know there might still be some images out there, but it was women and children. The only man there was my father, who's an almost 70-year-old man with a heart condition who is by no means intimidating. But when it came down to the three of us were charged with intimidation for not allowing, which I think is one of the things we need to clear up, is that Murphy Oil was on the reserve. We stood there, and we were not letting them leave the site to leave the reserve. We were not preventing them from coming onto the reserve. We were preventing them from leaving the site. So we were arrested by Blood Tribe Police, charged with intimidation against a 30-plus convoy of semis, trucks, and when we got, I have been cleared of the charges. I had to go through the alternative measures program, which meant that I I decided to, with the distribution that was given out to our community, I had said I was not going to accept that. And if I ever accepted the distribution, I was going to return it back to my community. So when I got charged, and one of the options with the Alternative Measures Program was I had to donate. I took my distribution and I donated to the high school that I work at and the food bank so that someone else could benefit from the oil and gas deal that we were supposed to be getting rich from. So that's what I did with mine, and I was cleared of the charges as of March. However, the two other ladies, one is going to trial in June, and the other one is still going through her alternative measures. I know it caused a lot of people to be upset with me for deciding to go with that alternative measures, but at the end of the day, I really did need to think about myself, because intimidation charges could mean whether or not I have access to travel back and forth from Canada to the United States, that kind of thing. I could be considered a terrorist. So I didn't want that kind of stigma behind me, so I did choose to do the alternative measures. But just like within our community, the oil, we have seen a lot of the negative impacts of oil and gas. Currently there is 4 sites. One site is very close to the high school, the middle school, and our college. And there has been on a daily basis since December of this year, an air quality van that has been monitoring the air in that area, which was hired out by Murphy Oil to another oil and gas company. We've tried to ask where the results are going from that. We have not been able to get any answers from that. I'm not sure if anybody is aware, but I believe it's December 5th, earthquakes were felt on the Blood Reserve within about 2 or 3 kilometers from the fracking site. When that was questioned, the first thing that was told to us was, well, you have to show the relation between the fracking and the earthquakes. So we're trying hard to try and work to stop. I don't know if we're going to be able to stop it, because this is an election year for my community, which is probably a blessing, because if everything goes as we'd like, we might not end up having the same individuals who agree to this oil and gas. But I'd like to thank all of you for allowing me to share my story of what's happening in our community. And I know I was a little worried, because my lawyer made sure that I had to be very careful of what I said, what I was doing, and this is my first actual public speaking since the arrest, just because of what my lawyer said. Thank you, and I know that I'm going to pass the torch on to my little guy back there, Presley, who's going to be fighting these same battles when he's a big boy. So I'm starting. He's going to follow in my footsteps.
Thanks, Bill. So we have about